What is up, everybody? Today we have a deck profile that is covering the tournament run from Joseph Robinson, who got first place at Gen Con online playing Alphamon. So he is going to be the one narrating this profile so he can give his insight and whatnot to his winning list. So without further ado, let's get straight into it.
What's up, guys? My name's Joey Robinson, or Joseph Robinson, or jaxi.os on the Hoang Zero Discord. I'm here doing a deck report and a deck profile on my X-Antibody list that I got first place at the Gen Con online regionals this weekend. And so it was a super fun time, had a lot of fun. It was definitely a long tournament, definitely a battle of endurance, but you know, we got our first place, and that is super awesome with my favorite deck, my favorite Digimon, Alphamon. And so I'm really excited to give this to you, and I thought maybe I could, you know, provide some insight, as I don't think I'm going to be playing this deck for the rest of the format. So to start off, I guess a little bit of a tourney report. We played into, what was that first round? We played into Armors, and then we played into Gallantmon, and then we played into Security Control. We played into Alphamon after that. Then we played into Rise Greymon. Round 7 or 6 was Alphamon. And then we played another Alphamon, and our final round was Grandis. And I believe that is 8 whole rounds total, until Kyle Kemper, my hero, came and cut the tourney off by beating the pair down. And so shout out to Kyle, great job. But yeah, it was a really fun time. It was a really diverse spread. I killed a couple alphas along the way. But yeah, I was very surprised by some of my matchups, and honestly had to do a lot of learning on the fly. And so, but overall, I think you have a really good matchup into Gallant. They can't pop anything, so they can't really do much. Armors was pretty easy. The guy was good, but the deck, being able to Digivolve their Magna X and then pop it or you can kind of just frees up the matchup a lot. And some of the tech choices we run in here really free up that matchup. For SetCon, that can be a bit of a coin toss, but honestly, I really like that matchup. I have a lot of experience into it, and I feel like having cards like Congo really free that matchup up in terms of the yellow-purple SetCon that we played against. And so despite our opponent, I really liked, he had some really good techs in there, such as Holy Flame and minus security stuff that's really annoying for this deck to deal with. Ultimately, just being able to swing with such disrespect just makes the matchup so free. And so then we played Alpha, and you know, I feel like our list really helped us at the end of the day overcome a lot of those matchups. And yeah, we had just I think it comes down, obviously, most mirrors come down to pieces, who sees their pieces first. But then part of it comes down to sequencing, and I feel like our deck is better sequenced to beat Alpha, and I'll explain that a little more later as I get into the deck list. And then yeah, after we beat all the Alphas, we played Grandis, and Grandis was a really, we stacked our opponent, sorry Justin. We actually hit the Breath of the Gods to save the game. But in general, Grandis is a pretty easy matchup because of Retaliation Blocker, and you can just clap back really hard. Like, Grandis has to pull out. If they pull out first, they just lose their stack for free. And because you have so many more search options, you can often play the waiting game, be it you go first or second, to just sit in raising and make them pull out first and put them in a spot where they just can't answer you. And so I feel like Grandis in general is a relatively free matchup for this deck, you know, so long as you play it right and account for the Akua memory. But yeah, and so that was our matchups for the day. It was a really fun tourney. I loved my opponents. They were all really good people. I think we only had one guy who was a little salty. But you know, you're always going to have that. It was a long tourney, so I don't even fault the guy. It just happens. But yeah, it was a good time. And so getting into the deck profile itself, we start off with our very own 4 Doraemons. Now, we only run 4 Doraemons because the pre-release is really, you know, really shiny, and I had them and I wanted to run them. But also, it's just your best egg. It draws you a card. Running the, I think it's Kyokomon or something like that, really just hurts a lot more matchups than it helps. You don't need 5 eggs. You shouldn't. Often, I rarely got to the 4th egg, to be honest, because you don't pull out a raising just all gun-ho like you would with maybe armors or something. You actually have a lot of time to just sit in the back and set up, and so you don't need 5 eggs. You can run 5 eggs, but I personally just think if you just have 4 Doraemon, your consistency is going to be at an all-time high, and you don't have to worry about that. And so starting with that, we then move on. We run 9 rookies, and the 9 rookies is a little low. I was on 10 literally a couple days before the tourney, but I needed to find space for cards, and I was just doing like random math in my head, and it was like, you know what, I think we can get away with running 9 rookies, because a lot of our tamers and a lot of our options, or a chunk of our options, really help search for cards, and you can just grab a rookie off that. And so it's almost like we're running more rookies by not really running more rookies. And so it kind of hurt throughout the day. There was tons of turns and a couple games where I lost just because I just bricked, and that just happens. But overall consistency, I think this deck is the most consistent deck in the format, and it allows you to be greedy and run just 9 rookies like this, versus something like Mass Day where when you run 4 or 8 rookies, it's actually just 8 rookies. Like there's no help coming. So to start, we have 4 Dorumon. Truly the best boy, the best Digimon ever, best rookie ever. Yeah, he just gains you a memory, and he has the top 3 search, super broken. You know, a lot of games were won just by him, and you know, they hit him in security, I can get it and put it back, and if it's in stack, you just gain another memory. It's just, it enables a lot of extra plays that maybe shouldn't have been there, but because you have it, you have it. And then you have Ryudomon. We ran 2 Ryudomon. To be honest, I hate this card. I just hate its inheritable. Decoy is so bad, but it searches for Yuji, which is probably our best tamer. It's debatable, I guess. But being able to search Yuji is super broken. And so I was running it at 4, but I was just really hating it a lot of times. So I cut it down to 2. And I opted in for 1 BT9 Dorumon. And I put this in because I felt like there was just a lot of times where I was just bot decking too many cards. It felt like the laws of diminishing return, where you do so much cycle in this deck, and check top 3, check top 4, that you're bound to put down a lot of cards. But you know, so in order to kind of deal with that, I put in 1 Dorumon because I just wanted to discard and sometimes draw 2. And this was actually super helpful a lot of times, because the discard is really important, because if you can get a really, really good card and discard early, like an Oriyumon, because that card's a bit of a brick in hand for 2 new fresh cards, it really helps out a lot. And so I honestly might consider upping it, but I don't know what I would take out. So that's just something to consider. I definitely think you still need Ryuda, and Doru is absolutely a 4-up. And then our last spicy tech in our rookie slot was Suna Rizamon. Suna Rizamon is fire. This card just enables a lot of extra plays. Its piercing did not come up once. I was just never in a position to like play it and then punch through something. That just never comes up. But it's a inheritable effect to give an extra security was amazing all throughout the day. So often when you play this deck and you swing with your Oryuken and restand, you're only swinging for 2 checks. And if you swing for more, it's because you committed another Doru Gray to the source, which isn't optimal, because sometimes you're going to lose a stack and you just have to play with that in mind. Sometimes you don't want to commit the only card that might get you out later for doing that. And then sometimes you just bot deck them all, and it's really hard. And so having Suna, even though it's not searchable, it's one of the few cards that isn't searchable, having Suna in there allowed me to swing for 3 checks, and then I could put back the Doru Gray into deck, which doesn't usually happen, and I could get back to the Doru Gray, which is really important, and I'll explain that more once we get to Oryuken itself. But that's it for the level 4 or level 3s. They're really good, and yeah, I really like this lineup. I think a little greedy, but we got away with it. And so next we have our level 4s, and our level 4s are pretty basic. but we committed to the KISS ideal. Keep it simple, stupid. And so we just ran 4 Darugamons, and then we ran 4 Dex Darugamons. And you have a couple options that you can run in your level 4s. You can run Ginryu for blocker, and you can run Grumblemon for game, which I really tried to be greedy and only run 3 decks and run 2 Grumbles. But at the end of the day, it just hurts your overall consistency. This deck does not, I know we're in an OTK format, but you often don't win in one turn. And I think that's not just true for this deck, that's true for most decks. Usually you swing for tempo in one game where you clear out 5 security, but the only real deck that can consistently get in that 6 damage or 6 swing to like finish the game is Melga, and every other deck has to clear 5 and then wait a turn to kill you again next turn, and so I think with that in mind, I just gave up on the Grumble idea because it was more consistent than it helped. You never wanted to Digivolve into it. It was never, you can't put it back with Oryuken, and it was just not very helpful. And I never felt like I really needed the extra blocker because Dex Darugamon gives the blocker that you need. And if people don't answer the Oryuken immediately by pulling out, then the Oryuken stayed for 2 turns and you just killed them. Like you actually just won the game. So in terms of timing, it doesn't matter in that sense. And so yeah, that was really simple. Just 8. Search for what you need. There are tons of times where I actually just Digivolved into Dex Daruga and Raising just because I just didn't have time to wait for the Darugamon, and that was a bit unfortunate at times, but I think playing with that flexibility at times where it's like, okay, I don't think help is coming, let me just do what I can right now, really helped me save some games that I think were spiraling out of control, because you want to keep tempo in terms of presenting lethal or presenting pressure to the opponent. So yeah, that's it for the level 4s. We have the Doru Greymon in our level 5s. This card's obviously just your 4 of your staple. It's your best level 5, and it's just amazing. It gives protection to the stack, which I think really is what separates this deck in the meta, and that most other decks just don't have the protection that this deck has, and they don't have it with such ease. Melga has its mini form of protection from battle, but gets sniped by options. Warg gets sniped by battle and loses to DP reduction, which can be really annoying. But this deck has an answer for both of those, and even has an answer for bouncing. That isn't Dorugray, but another form. And it also puts another card in source, which triggers so many things. So you get draws, you get memory off that. It's just a really, really good card. And really, yeah, it's your absolute 4 of. You run it, the sec +1 is broken. This card is just on crack. If this deck gets any more support, this card might have to get hit because this card is literally carrying the level 5 slot all by itself. And so the next 2 cards are the Dex Doru Greymon. This card was, really, helpful at times, and then really, just not missed. And so I think that's why we run it at 2. There are times where you just go into it just for an extra source for the Oryuken, and that was probably its main purpose. And then there are a couple times where we used it to get rid of a memory choker or just an extra card on board. And so this was, really helpful, but often, if I had to discard something and I didn't have a target, this might have been the card that I discarded because we didn't super miss it. But I still think you run it at 2. I just don't think you run it at 3 or 4, like I see some lists, unless you're running like the Dex Doru deck, which is a different deck entirely from this. And then our last level 5 was our MVP, Greymon. This card is just sick. This card is super underrated. I think you have an extra flex slot, and it has a great inheritable. And there were times where I just Digivolved into it just for Digivolving's sake to trigger effects. And so it was really good all day. So what this card allows you to do, it says at the end of attack, if this Digimon has Alphamon in its name, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with the play cost of 5 or less. And so this really, Alphamon can have a really hard time dealing with wide boards. And so in the D Reaper matchup, you kill the, you know, if you're lucky, you kill the Gate Reaper, Gatekeeper over the Death X, because hopefully they haven't played Death X against you. Usually if they do, GG. But you kill the Gatekeeper, but then you just have to stare at all the small bodies, and you either have to swing into them, which sucks, or they just kill you and you try to swing into security and hope that you don't hit anything. But this allows you where you can be aggressive, swing at security, or swing into a Digimon, while also clearing out boards, completely clearing out boards. And so it makes Alpha fighting for tempo really, really good. This card came up so much today in the armor matchup. You know, I feel like the armor matchup was already pretty in Alpha's favor, but this blows it out the water. Against Grandis, it's super, super helpful, because there are times where you get into situations where if the Grandis player is smart, they know they're out, and they know if they play 2 Terriermons on you, you're kind of just stuck for the game. Like, you have to get so much set up in order to play around 2 Terriermons. Playing around 1 is already really hard, but playing around 2 is almost impossible. And so there are times where, you know, having the extra Grademon and sequencing correctly allowed me to kill both and then still swing for Oryuken for game, or just to clear the rest of their board. And so this was super helpful, because I'll explain a little more later as to how you do that and the sequencing for all that. But Grademon was definitely, you know, really good all day. Probably the 3rd best card, the second being Suna. Suna was really good all day. But yeah, I think Grademon, broken card. I wanted to put it in this deck, and I got to put it in, and it ended up just being a super clutch all day. So that's it for the level 5s. Moving on, we're going into our level 6s. Level 6s I kept really simple. Once again, keep it simple, stupid. Alphamon, the BT9 Alphamon, it's just broken. It's, you know, the fact that it put something in the source is really big. And the D-Digivolve, no deck has an answer for D-Digivolve. It's just the flat out truth. Wargrave would be an impossible matchup if it wasn't for the fact that we have D-Digivolve, because they could just go into Omni X, and Omni X could be a meta-defining card if it wasn't for this Alphamon literally just de-digivolving it and making it irrelevant, you know? And it's the same with a lot of other problematic cards. It's like Magna X would be a broken card in this format if it wasn't for Alphamon just being like, all right, just de-digivolve it, and you just ignoring the problem altogether. And this card really just part of the big reason why this deck is tier 1, because it just frees up so many things. You at first read, you don't think, oh, this is a crazy rare, but then in synergy with everything else, you're like, oh, this card's broken. You know, this card is just flat out amazing. And it's not when digivolving, it's once per turn during your turn. And a lot of my in the mirror, a lot of people forgot that, and so sometimes I would pull out a stack and I didn't have the Oryuken, so I put this on board. I did digivolve once, and then they try to do stuff, and then, you know, they couldn't get rid of it, and so I just de-digivolved again, and they were like, oh, I forgot about that. And it's like, yeah, like, you know, it is not once per turn. Super easy to trigger and super helpful. So our next level 6 is Oryumon. We run 3 of Oryumon. We thought about running 4, but that was just really clunky. You never want to digivolve into this card. It's just not, it's not BT8. It's not as great anymore in order to digivolve into. And so we always just ended up discarding it if we could. Be it through Dex Doru, or Dex Doru Gray, or Dorumon itself. You just always tried to discard this card. It wasn't super great to digivolve. Sometimes I think there was 1 or 2 times we went into a stack with Oryumon and tried to pop something because we were just behind in tempo and fighting for tempo. But I think we lost those games. So I think it's just not really helpful all throughout the day. But it's inheritable as a level 6 is broken. If this Digimon has Alphamon in its name, unsuspend. Broken effect allows you to swing for 5, 6 checks, you know, 4 checks, however many you have, and really just allows you to do a lot of stuff. And the timing of it is also really important, end of attack. So that was really good. And then we have here 3 Oryukens. Now, I really wanted to get away with running 2 and maybe put in another Grumblemon, but there was a game where 2 were in security and I just wanted to shoot myself. So we upped it to 3 and we spent the $40 in order to get the 3rd. And this is, yeah, this is the boy. This is your win con. This is, you know, the biggest thing about this card is, you know, obviously it deletes the highest DP, and then it gives you all the memory. That is 16k. That is really difficult for most decks to deal with. The fact that, you know, I think 15k is a pretty easy number to hit. So you can trade, you can punch over, but outside of Grandis, you know, no deck can easily hit over 16k. Warg has to have like a really, really optimal setup in order to hit over 16k. On average, they're only hitting 15, which 15 is a great number, but the fact that you have the only card in the game that's 16k is really significant. And then its end of turn effect to allow you to essentially have another turn is really broken. Putting back 7 allows you to do so much. It allows you to refresh stacks, and so one of the reasons we only run 9 rookies is because I can put rookies back, and so I will get to them again. I'm not worried about getting to rookies. A lot of decks, once they're out of rookies, they're just out, but this deck, it's like, okay, I can put my cards back and I can get back to my cards. And there were a couple games where I would go into an Oryukin stack and the stack would die, but I already had another Oryukin, which is why I was willing to give up the stack. And I could set myself up to where I could cycle back into another Oryukin stack. And that matters. Being able to play on the fly like that, being able to count your cards and understand where they're at in deck is really helpful and really good. And just having that type of game knowledge is extremely helpful. It's a lot to think about, and it can be a headache. I know by the end of the day I was getting a little fried, but it was super helpful throughout the day, just knowing like, okay, my Congos are in deck, or my Breath of the Gods are in deck, or this is in deck, or, you know, I put this card back in deck, so I know I'm going to get back to it, is really helpful. And this card really helps with that, along with all the search in this deck. There's just so much information that you can have because of this deck's consistency. And so keeping that in mind, it's easy to play this deck and just kind of be brain dead and not keep track of any of that stuff, and then you're like, where are my pieces? But if you actually just pay attention, because so much information is revealed, you know where stuff is. And even for opponents, if they paid a little more attention, they would know, okay, he's missing this, he probably didn't have that, or I haven't seen this, I haven't seen that. Now, they don't have the luxury of knowing your deck, so they don't know if you're running security bombs and if they might be somewhere, or if they're in your hand or not. But you do, and so it's an information game at the end of the day, and knowledge is power, right? So I think just playing with that in mind, this card's just broken, giving you an extra turn, popping a Digimon, being 16k, and giving a lot of extra information along with a deck refresh is super hot. So that's why it is the secret rare of the set 9 set. So broken card, favorite card, best boy, and, you know, best card in Digimon. So coming up next, we have our very own options, or let's do our tamers first. So first we have 2 Kotas. Now, I hate Kota, to be honest. I really wanted to run just one Kota, but we tested the D-Reaper matchup, and the difference between winning and losing is often dice roll, or you have to win the dice roll, or you get a Kota on board, because D-Reaper just likes to choke you to 1 as often as you can. It doesn't matter what deck you are. Any deck, they will try to choke you to 1. And so one easy way to combat that is Kota. Kota always gives you 3, which allows you to play more cards, and, you know, it means you're not getting choked and you just have a lot more freedom. And so we upped it to 2 because this was really relevant. And then into SecCon, it's also pretty important. It sucks that you're giving them fodder for Death X, but it at the expense of just having your 3 memory. It is it's worth it at the end of the day. I called it a necessary evil, as I told Hoang, because it's just I don't like playing 4 into some matchups, like against Melga. I just never feel like I have time to play this. But, you know, it was really important and really needed, and obviously we didn't run into Melga all day, so that just never came up. But yeah, so it's also a broken security bomb, to be honest. I hit it a couple times and I was like, wow, that was extremely helpful. Now I can pop off and live my life. And so next up, we played 3 Yujis. Yeah, I don't think you run 4 with this card. It's probably your best tamer in a lot of ways because of its ability to tap 1 and put something into source and pull out and gain 1 and draw 1. It's a super good card, but I just don't think you need more than 4. It's searchable, which is really helpful and really nice. Both of these tamers are searchable, which is really nice and really cool. But yeah, this card really, the games where I did actually OTK someone, it was because I had I hit a UG, usually in security, or I played the UG from hand, and it just allows you, if you somehow high roll into the second Oryu, it allows you to go from swinging for, what's it called, to swinging for game. Swinging for 5 to swinging for game, which matters a lot in my opinion. So next up we have the 4 Cool Boy. This card is so good. This card's so broken. If it gets banned, I understand, but I really hope they don't do it to the boy. This card's amazing. It's just it's a 2 cost. It allows you to search for anything with X-Antibody or the X-Antibody option. And as you know, we're playing an X-Antibody deck. This is an extra fora for any card in your deck. So I'm not running just 3 Oryukens. I'm running 7 Oryukens. I'm not running just 3 Alphamons. I'm running 7 Alphamons. I'm not running just 7 X-Antibody. I'm not running just 9 rookies. I'm running like 17, 18 rookies, because this card just searches for everything in your deck. It is just so good. I'm not running 8 freaking level 4s. I'm running like 16. Like, this card's just cracked. It just adds extra to your deck and allows you to search for anything, especially in this deck. It's good in most decks, but it's especially broken in this deck, and I think you have to run it at 4 because it just allows you to pop off. You hit it in security. If you have 2 of these set up and a UG, it's GG. Like, they can't do anything to stop you. No memory choker or anything will really help them in that situation. But yeah, this card is broken, and I think the games that felt the worst were the games where I just didn't see this card. So yeah, you run these 9 Tamers. You might be able to get away with 8 depending on if D-Reaper dies. I think the first card to go would be a Kota. I would definitely love to run less of that card, but for this tournament it was really helpful, it was really important, and I wanted to be ready if I played into Setcon or D-Reaper, and I did play into Setcon, and it mattered, it helped. So I think just keep that in mind. Especially because this tournament had no mulligans, and so I didn't have the liberty of putting my hand back and trying again, so I actually needed cards that would help not only stabilize but help me maintain consistency. And so Oda Cool Boy really helped over other cards that I'll reference later. And so next up after that we have our options. Now our options are 2 Congo and 2 Breath of the Gods. We'll stop and talk about these. So these are your protection cards and your best security bombs. These are really helpful. These are so Breath of the Gods is broken in a lot of ways, because so often with the Alpha Oryuken you swing and then you either have to pass to keep your blocker, or you have to just give up your blocker and just swing. And so you either cleared their security and you no longer have blocker, or you didn't get to clear their security, you only took a couple checks and you kept your blocker active. And this allows you to get rid of all of that. Like, not only does this protect you from bouncing and DP reduction, which is good and which is helpful, that can be really nice, it really helps you just, you know, be aggressive. And the reboot is broken. There's no reboot in this deck, so playing for that and getting that in another way is extremely helpful, and that was probably its biggest use. There were tons of times where I would swing for 5 checks and then I would just end my turn with the reboot blocker, and they just couldn't do anything because the Digimon is literally perfect. It can't be reduced, it can't be DP deleted, it can't be attacked into, and it cannot be bounced. It's like it's the perfect Digimon, and once you establish this, it was, you know, kind of game in a lot of ways. And then next, you know, it has a broken security effect. Your opponent can't attack the player for the turn. This saved me in my last rounds against Justin. He played Grandis, and he actually had game, but he hit the last check Breath of the Gods, and I think it was the first one all day that it actually came up, and it, like, you know, I just won next turn because he couldn't kill me. Like, he couldn't do anything. I definitely sacked him, and, you know, felt a little bad about that, but, you know, you run security bombs for just that, right? And so it was super helpful in that sense. So then going on into Congo. Now Congo, I feel a little less hot about. It came up, it was extremely helpful into armors, but once again, armors feels like a matchup that you just kind of win. So, like, this card helped me lock out my opponent from just ever even swinging. I just ended my turn on some Congos, and they could never just fight. They literally just couldn't swing because all their Digimon are 7k or less. And so if they don't have the Magna X on board, they just can't do anything. But it did also come up into the SecCon matchup where it just turns off Chaos Degrade and it turns off their healing, which is pretty relevant. And I don't like this card. I don't love this card right now. I think it gets better in the future. But I think playing around the one option that really destroys you, which is Chaos Degrade and healing in general, is really important. And so we ran 2, and it did come up. It was helpful. It definitely secured my round 3 SecCon matchup. But yeah, if I had to maybe cut an option, it might just be Congo. I definitely think that Metal Garurumon X is much more popular, and Breath of the Gods really frees up that matchup, because otherwise Melga can clap back at you really hard and just bounce your stuff, and you just have to sit there and take it, where if you Breath of the Gods, you're all set and you're all good. So our next 2 options were Black Memory Boost. I love Black Memory Boost. I actually really wanted to run more of this card. I was running it at 3. And I think I might cut a Congo for another one, because yeah, it searches for more pieces, it gives you more memory, it's a great security bomb, and I think it's just really good in this format. There's not a lot of memory blockers, and so it can be really, sometimes you just play it and they just have to sit there and stare at it. It just gives you a lot of extra freedom in terms of your plays. And the fact that it just searches for is really, really good. I don't think I have to explain too much about Black Memory Boost. I wanted to run more, but we had to cut something, and so we cut one of these for an extra coda. And as much as I hate to say it, I think it was the right choice for the day. But yeah, if you feel like, man, I want another card, another searcher, I'd probably run Black Memory Boost, because the memory of 4 and 3 really matter in this meta. And so yeah, just keep that in mind. And then our last card, and definitely our most phenomenal card of the day, was the 2 X-Antibody option. Now, a lot of people think in this deck this card's pretty useless, and I completely disagree. I think this card is broken. I think this card is cracked in this deck. Everything searches for this card. Everything searches for this card. You can grab this card off your Cool Boys, you can grab this card off your Kodas, you can grab this card off your Dorumons, you can grab this card off your Ryutas. You can just grab this card. Usually when it says grab something, it's like, hey, you can grab this card as well. And so that being a factor is really good, but it also enables a lot of cheeky little plays in terms of passing turn with Oryukin. Because of this card, you not only get an extra source into your X-Antibody, but you also get to sequence your things in a way where you can essentially get more memory, because cards like Oryumon and Greymon say end of attack, but Alphamon say end of turn. And so you put this into source on your Alphamon, you swing, you Digivolve for 3 into Oryukin, and then you trigger Oryukin, you pop something, and because you've already passed turn, because you've essentially swung with Blitz with Oryukin, you can trigger Oryukin's effect, but before you do that, you can trigger Oryumon's end of attack, restand, and you can trigger Greymon's end of attack, delete one of your opponent's Digimon with 5k or less. And this is really important, because if they have double memory choker on board, you have to get rid of that second memory choker in order to get your Oryukin off. Well, how do you do that? Well, if I swing with the Oryukin, I pop usually their big body. I went into Dex Doru Grey in order to pop one of the memory chokers. I still have to get rid of that last memory choker in order to get my memory. Oh, Greymon, end of attack, allows me to pop that, and then I can trigger my end of turn effect to then gain all this memory. And also, since I've already used their effects, I don't have to leave them in source. So I can now put Greymon, Oryumon, X-Antibody all back into deck, and now I've gained an extra 3 memory because of it. And so these cards would usually have to stay in my source because I want to use them later, or I'm waiting to trigger their effect. But because I did it this way, I can now put these cards back on the bottom of the deck, gain more memory, and pop off harder on this turn. And so this card is just cracked. This card is fantastic. People thought I was high rolling them because they thought it was a 1-of, but I put it to 2 because I was like, this card's broken and I want to see it. And it's even a decent bomb. I used it, or I didn't use it. I checked it in security one time in the mirror, and the guy had hybrid for game and he had 2 memory. But since he hit this, he only had 1 memory, and he couldn't win. He couldn't win the game that turn, and I just proceeded to win the next turn. And so yeah, this card was definitely the best card in my deck all day. Obviously, outside of the core essentials of the Oryuken and stuff, this card really helped me just pop off. And I think you know, it's not something that you can just throw into your deck. I think it is definitely something that you have to build with in mind, and it's why I can put cards in such as Tsunnerizumon. So we put in 2 Tsunnerizumon because putting cards like Tsunnerizumon is like, Joey, you can't put that card back on bottom. It's like, yeah, you're right. So how do I make up for that memory loss? We put in an X-Antibody. And what that allows me to do is I get the memory back from that I'm missing off the Tsunnerizumon, but then I can put cards like Dorugraemon, which is usually our only form of security plus. I can put that now back into the deck. And that matters because usually you never put back your Dorugrays. It's one of the few cards that always stays in your stack. And that means if you run out of level 5s, if your level 5s are in security, it's GG, that's game. And so, but being able to put back your Dorugrays, now all of a sudden I can draw it again and I can use it for another stack if need be. And that comes up more than you might think. And so just keeping that in mind, and even Greymon, you know, if you just threw in Greymon into this deck without the X-Antibody option, it actually probably does feel pretty bad. But with the X-Antibody option, all of a sudden a card like Greymon becomes super cracked because now I can sequence it in a way where I remove more bodies, but then I can also put the Greymon back on bottom of deck. And so it's a really cool card and a really good card, but I think you absolutely have to build for it in mind. You cannot just throw it in, maybe as a 1-of for an extra security, but it actually has a lot more implications that you might not think of, that most decks just don't have, because all they do is, you know, use it for essentially a fake blitz, and they just use it, Digivolve, warp into their thing, trigger their effects, and boom, that's it. That's all it does. And so, but this deck has a special opportunity to take more advantage of it and search it more. And so I really feel like this card was my best card of the day. It won me a lot of matchups. There are tons of times where I went into my alpha stack, had 2 memory, put X-Antibody into source, warped into the Alphamon Oryuken, and then triggered all the effects, and then put everything back into the bottom of deck, gaining 7 full memory, going back to 6, and just really going to town off just that much tempo being lost. Like, I've cleared your board, I've swung for all your security, and I still get to set up tamers, blockers, whatever I need in order to deal with whatever you think you're going to do. Sometimes I set up an extra blocker, and now you, like, no matter what, you can't clap back. Sometimes I play, you know, Congo and Breath of the Gods, and now you can't do anything about that. Sometimes I just set up tamers, and it's like, now I can high roll you again the next turn. And so yeah, I think this card really enables a lot and really helped. Yeah, so that was my tourney run. It was an awesome time, definitely. You know, would love to do it again. And like I said, awesome to play a deck that I love. That's definitely probably the best deck in the format for once. Black has been suffering for a while, so I don't want to hear it about this deck getting banned. You blue lovers can, you know, suck it for a format. You'll be fine. So we deserve this. We earned this. This was awesome. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I want to give some shout outs. I want to first shout out my San Antonio peeps, my boys, Jesse, Chris Godoy, Andrew, Gene, and Steve, my main guys. I know that the San Antonio group is so well connected that I know I'm missing out a lot of people and people are going to be upset. But, you know, my guys, really, those are guys I play with the most. Those are guys I have the most fun playing with. And yeah, I think we just really have a great community down here and we have a lot of fun. And so thanks to them for just helping me out, getting me cards, play testing with me. It was a lot of fun and I'm glad to bring this home for them. I want to say a shout out to the Hoang Zero Discord. You know, definitely shout out to my guy Hoang and James for them, or Zero, as you guys know. They've been I think friends for now, I think 10 years. James at least, maybe not Hoang, but we've been friends for a while, and we played Vanguard, and to transition from Vanguard into Digimon can be a little bit weird, a little bit scary in some different ways, but I'm so glad that you guys got me into this game. I'm so grateful for you guys' community and just the Discord itself, all my friends on there. I've never been part of a internet or online community before, and for this to be my first experience is unlike any other. And so special thank you to all the guys I get to play, all the fun debates we get to have, all the memes we get to make. And yeah, I just look forward to more that we get to do. Hopefully we can have a lot of fun at Nats, be it online or in person. And yeah, it's added so much to my life. And so I really appreciate you guys, what you got, the community guys you guys have fostered. And yeah, just the Digimon scene in general has been amazing. And then I want to say a special thank you to my guys back home in Houston. I live in San Antonio now, but my heroes friend, you guys have really helped me, just play card games, grow up as a kid. And I'm so glad that we can play another card game. I feel like we'll play tons of card games in the future, be it One Piece, Digimon, whatever. I know that whatever it is, we're going to be playing together. And I want to say a special thank you to you guys, just for, always being there for me. Always, dealing with my rants and going back and forth, and just, yeah, having the fun that we can have playing card games is always awesome. So those are my shout outs. Definitely, love the community. Thank you guys so much for just listening to me. I hope this helps and, can even give some direction to those who want to play the deck. I've been playing this deck for 3 formats, so I kind of have a good idea of how it works. And so, but yeah, there's also tons of room for spice. So not one shoe fits all. And so, but yeah, take care. Love you guys. I'm heading out. Peace.